Yeah, a lot of people will get in trouble if I tell you about it.
Fair enough. So how do you feel about Epic Mickey the game in hindsight? You know, it turned out well, it did get a sequel, but it felt like as a gamer that the Wii had kind of started to tail off a little bit. And so when you think of Epic Mickey now in hindsight, what do you think about?
In April of 1930, Ub Iwerks, the co-creator and original animator of Mickey Mouse, resigned from his position at the Walt Disney Studios. His departure was caused by a combination of several factors, including a desire to lead his own studio and a personal falling out with Walt Disney over a perceived lack of appreciation by Walt for Ub's talent and work. Although Ub would eventually return to Disney around a decade later, both men were forever changed by this event. Ub had been Walt's right-hand man from the beginning, and had stuck with Walt through a number of difficult circumstances, most notably the loss of their previous cartoon star Oswald the Lucky Rabbit to Universal Studios. But Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks were not the only ones affected by their parting ways. Someone else was affected too, and that someone was Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse in the 1920s was not the character we know today. Today, Mickey is essentially a role model, a straight-laced heroic character defined by his moral virtue, big heart, and glowing smile. But Mickey in the 1920s was almost the exact opposite, a scrappy, mischievous anti-hero who bucked the system and wasn't afraid to ruffle a few feathers to get his way. Sometimes literally. Essentially, there are two sides of Mickey, each reflecting one of his two co-creators. Walt Disney was the edgy one, always pushing the envelope with his art, defying industry trends, and having an aggressive hard edge to him that often took people by surprise when they met him. Ub Iwerks was the straight-laced one, soft-spoken, kind-hearted, and friendly to all. It was ironic then that each man brought the opposite trait to Mickey. Ub's Mickey was Walt, daring, brash, and resourceful, and Walt's Mickey was Ub, kind, humble, and open-hearted. In other words, Mickey Mouse was the real-life embodiment of his creator's friendship. When Ub left, so did part of Mickey. Over time, Mickey's personality changed to be entirely Walt's version that reflected Ub Iwerks, eventually becoming the character we know him as today. Now, of course, there were other reasons Mickey's personality changed, but Ub's departure was arguably the turning point when these changes really started to take effect. This dramatic shift in Mickey's personality has been a source of tension for the Disney company ever since the change happened, and over the years, Disney has made several attempts to either revive Mickey's edgy, mischievous side, or to explore the two sides of his personality from a character perspective. One instance of this is the 1940 animated film Fantasia, in which Mickey gets into trouble for stealing the sorcerer Yen Sid's magic hat and flooding his workshop. Another is the 1995 cartoon Runaway Brain, in which Mickey trades brains with a Frankenstein-esque monster. Yet another example is the Mickey Mouse animated series created by Paul Rudish, in which Mickey is given a more modern design and style of humor. But I think the most fascinating and compelling exploration of Mickey's dual personality is not one found in any cartoon, film, or television series, but rather in a completely different medium, a video game. Hello extraordinary people, I'm Daniel, and today we're going to talk about my favorite video game of all time, Epic Mickey. Epic Mickey is a Wii exclusive video game released in 2010 by the now defunct Disney Interactive Studios that explores Mickey Mouse as a character and his relationship to Disney history, especially his relationship to Disney's once long forgotten original cartoon star Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. We have a lot to cover, so it's best if we start at the very beginning, in the year of our Lord, 2003. In 2003, the Walt Disney Company was going through a rough period. Disney CEO Michael Eisner was facing scrutiny and criticism for his running of the company, most notably by Walt's own nephew, Roy E. Disney. Eisner's planned Disney decade of the 1990s had largely failed to materialize, mostly due to the failure of Disneyland Paris, or Euro Disneyland as it was originally called. The most recent Disney park to be built, Disney's California Adventure, was heavily criticized and failed to meet its attendance goals. And finally, Walt Disney Feature Animation was in the middle of a string of flops and had been overtaken at the box office by both Pixar and DreamWorks. Disney desperately needed new ideas, and one of these ideas was to get back into something they had abandoned years ago: video games. Disney had created its own in-house video game production studio back in 1988 called Walt Disney Computer Software Inc., or WDCS for short. Most of the games they developed were produced in partnership with other studios. The most successful of these was DuckTales, based on the television series of the same name, co-produced by Capcom and released in 1989 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, and Nintendo Game Boy. Both versions of the game sold over 1 million copies, and the Game Boy version was given the honor of Game Boy Game of the Year by PC Player magazine. Capcom would continue their partnership with Disney, and together they would produce several more successful games. In 1994, the studio was renamed to Disney Interactive, and in 1997, Disney Interactive shifted gears to focus only on video game licensing, letting other studios do all the work developing and producing the games. However, in 2003, the leadership at Disney Interactive decided to once again try their hand at actual video game development, again usually partnering with outside studios. To assist in this, Disney Interactive created Buena Vista Games as its main video game producer, most famously producing the Kingdom Hearts series of Square Enix. Now that Disney was back in the business of producing video games, it wanted to use them to revitalize its mascot, Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse had not starred in a theatrical short since 1953, with the exception of 2 featurettes, Mickey's Christmas Carol and The Prince and the Pauper, and 1 cartoon short released in 1995, Runaway Brain. I'm not going to talk much about Runaway Brain, as I already have a video on this short that I will link in the description. However, suffice to say that while Runaway Brain was a bold and daring artistic statement and even earned an Oscar nomination, it was not the revitalization of Mickey that Disney wanted. Outside the theater, Mickey had also appeared in direct-to-video films like Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, TV series like Mickey Mouse Works and House of Mouse, and even multiple video games, most notably the acclaimed Sega-produced game Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. However, none of these were really doing anything to change the public perception of Mickey Mouse as little more than a corporate mascot. In the summer of 2004, Buena Vista Games put together a think tank of interns to pitch ideas for a new video game starring Mickey Mouse. The goal was to do 2 things. 1. Reinvent Mickey Mouse by bringing back his original mischievous personality while still retaining his family-friendly charm and identity as a role model. 2. Create a video game starring this new version of Mickey that would appeal to average video game enthusiasts who weren't already fans of Mickey Mouse. These objectives were simple to understand, yet challenging to execute. However, the team came up with a brilliant idea that would, according to intern Matthew Stringer, allow them the, quote, creative license to stretch Mickey's look and demeanor without damaging his corporate iconhood. The idea was to place Mickey in a, quote, alternate universe, which was inhabited by forgotten Disney characters, including Walt Disney's first big cartoon star, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald had been created by Walt Disney and Iwerks for Universal Studios, but they had been forced to stop working on the cartoons due to a dispute with their producer, Charles Mintz. Walt and Ub then created Mickey Mouse, who almost immediately overtook Oswald in popularity, leading Oswald to eventually fade into obscurity and be forgotten. The basic idea of the game was based on one picture of Oswald and Mickey, from a card sent from Walt Disney to Universal Studios president Carl Laemmle in the 1930s. This picture depicted Mickey Mouse cheerfully greeting a resentful-looking Oswald. While this image does raise some interesting questions, such as whether Walt Disney was merely making a lighthearted joke with it, or smugly reminding Universal of their mistake in letting him go, it perfectly represented how a character would feel upon being upstaged by a subsequent creation. This idea of Oswald resenting Mickey's success would become the core theme of Epic Mickey. Rounding out the concept was the villain of the game, the Phantom Blot, a character who had originated in the Mickey Mouse comic series by Floyd Gottfredson in 1939, specifically the storyline Mickey Mouse Outwits the Phantom Blot. When the interns pitched the idea to Buena Vista Games' leadership, the executives realized that they had a golden idea on their hands, and took the pitch to Disney's top executives, including the Chief Operating Officer, Bob Iger. Iger thought the idea was great, except for one problem. Disney did not own the rights to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. But the idea was too good to ignore, and Epic Mickey would remain an in-development project at Disney Interactive, with Bob Iger starting to explore ways to reacquire Oswald. Around a year later, in September of 2005, Warren Spector, the creative director of the newly formed Junction Point Studios, was looking for companies to fund the development of some new video game projects. Spector was known for his pioneering of the immersive simulation genre of video games, or immersive sim for short, which include games like the Ultima Underworld series, System Shock, and perhaps Spector's most well-known and acclaimed game, Deus Ex. An immersive sim is essentially a role-playing game in which a large emphasis is placed on player choice, which will change the story and gameplay based on decisions made by the player. On a suggestion from his agent, Spector went to Disney to pitch ideas for a fantasy game and a science fiction game. Despite being a lifelong Disney fan who had even written his master's thesis about classic cartoon characters, Spector did not have high hopes for this meeting. He had mainly worked in games targeted at adults, and did not think Disney, a company focused on family-friendly media, would be interested in his ideas. However, Spector's agent informed him of Disney's desire to broaden their video game output, and encouraged Spector to share his ideas with them. Spector met with the executives of Disney Interactive and started to pitch his game ideas. However, to Spector's dismay, the executives started to look at their phones while he was still speaking to them. As Spector later recalled, "I thought to myself, I'm going to kill my agent when I get out of here because I was right and he was wrong." However, the executives were not looking at their phones out of boredom. Instead, they were texting each other to discuss whether or not they should offer Spector the chance to develop Epic Mickey. Spector was initially uninterested, reportedly saying, "No, I don't do games for kids. You've done an incredibly good job at making Mickey lame and irrelevant to anybody over the age of 8 over the last 30 years. I don't do games for kids." However, the executives assured Spector that they wanted him to reinvent Mickey and would give him the creative freedom to do so. This changed Spector's mind, and he responded, "You know, this is probably impossible. We're probably going to fail. I'm in."
The birth of the idea actually came from Disney itself. A lot of people think that I went to Disney and said, "Give me Mickey Mouse," and that's not the way it happened at all. I sat down with Disney talking about a fantasy game and a science fiction game I wanted to do, and they were, not particularly interested in it, frankly. Instead, they asked me if I was interested in doing a Mickey Mouse game, and my eyes opened up and my jaw hit the ground, and I said, "Well, yeah." And then all these Disney executives, it was so cute. They said, well, we have a concept. Is it okay if we pitch it to you? And I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, sure. and they did. And it was genius. It included some of the foundational elements that are still part of the game today. The idea of a world for forgotten and rejected characters, bringing Oswald back. All that came from within Disney. Mickey Mouse has achieved the highest levels of success, fame, fortune, love in every medium he's tackled, except video games. Yeah, there have been some Mickey Mouse video games, but I want to make him a video game hero on par with the very best, with the Marios, the Sonics, the people think of when they think video games. And I'm hoping Disney Epic Mickey gets him there.
Pre-production on Epic Mickey would begin soon after, but after several months, production stalled and Warren Spector left to pursue other projects. Meanwhile, Bob Iger was still focused on getting back the rights to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Iger had been promoted to CEO of Disney in March of 2005, taking over from Michael Eisner, who had stepped down after a sizable vote of no confidence from Disney shareholders. Iger clearly had bigger things to deal with right away, such as repairing Disney's relationship with Pixar, the failing movie studios, and the underperforming theme parks. But in 2006, a year after his promotion to CEO, Iger was finally able to acquire the rights to Oswald. He accomplished this by essentially trading ESPN sportscaster Al Michaels for the rights to the cartoon rabbit. Michaels, the primary commentator for Monday Night Football, was interested in rejoining his previous partner John Madden on NBC's broadcast of Sunday Night Football, but had just signed a long-term contract with ESPN, which is owned by Disney. Iger arranged for Michaels to be released from his ESPN contract in return for Universal, which is owned by the same company as NBC, to give Disney the rights to Oswald and several other minor assets, including any physical media Universal possessed of the Disney-produced Oswald shorts. Now that Oswald is back with Disney, Epic Mickey could finally officially enter production. In 2007, Disney Interactive recontacted Warren Spector and asked him to come back and work on Epic Mickey. He agreed, and Disney bought his company Junction Point that July and assigned Spector the position of creative director of Epic Mickey.
I was in when they said, "You want to make a Mickey Mouse game." But when they told me they'd gotten Oswald back, I lost it. I mean, I was done. I'm an old animation buff. I mean, I knew about Oswald before they mentioned him to me, which is kind of rare. And when they said, "You're going to have the opportunity to present Oswald on screen in a new Disney story for the first time since 1928, I mean, what an honor. In Oswald's case, we had to remind people what his personality was like, what his abilities were, what made him one of the most popular stars in the late 20s. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is one of the saddest and yet funniest characters in cartoon history. He was the prototype for every cartoon rabbit that came after him, and yet completely forgotten.
Spector and his team were given access to the Walt Disney Archives to research ideas and designs for the game.
Getting the opportunity to visit, the Disney Archives and just look at how much information has been stored over these past 80 years is mind-blowing.
The problem wasn't what to put in, the problem was what to put out, because Disney's history is so rich and there are so many characters and places to choose from. The weeding out process was a nightmare. Mickey in stillness is obviously Mickey. I mean, any combination of three circles is identified as Mickey by almost everyone on the planet. But Mickey in motion is what makes Mickey. The way Mickey moves is critical.
Looking back through the archives, seeing how those characters were animated in their original roles, and bringing that to Disney Epic Mickey.
We consulted with feature animation, we consulted with Pixar. In making a game about Mickey Mouse, of course, the animation quality in our title had to match feature movies.
That was the kind of fidelity we were trying to achieve. We had access to some of the most senior animators at Disney Feature Animation, and trust me, they critiqued our animations. There was a level of detail that those guys can get to about specific animations that I had never seen in my life. And I've been working with animators, for 30 plus years. The animators early in the project recreated moments from real Mickey cartoons.
Each one of us took a scene and reproduced it in 3D from what we saw in 2D, trying to figure out what was the appeal that drew us to Mickey in the first place.
We did extensive research just to make sure that the animators had the spot-on feel of not only the personality of those characters, but also what the Disney animators had brought to those characters to begin with.
Why did they rotate his ears this way? Why did they turn his head and cock his head this way? How do we take that and then find a balance that would work well in 3D?
We actually composited our Mickey into real Mickey cartoons, and people couldn't tell. That's when I knew we had nailed it. And it wasn't that we were literally going to imitate specific animations, but once the animators could imitate them, I knew they'd embodied the character. And for an animator, that's critical. There's a little fictional thing in the game about the importance of hearts. When a character is beloved by audiences and successful in cartoon, their little cartoon heart beats in their chest, right? And when they're forgotten, that heart just sort of fizzles and disappears, and then they themselves disappear and appear in the Wasteland. And so the one thing that no character in Wasteland has is a heart. I get this picture when I think about Gus and old black and white Horace and the Mad Doctor, and I just feel in this weird sort of way that I'm giving them their hearts back. Their hearts are going to appear in their chests again, and they're going to pop back into the real world, and people out here are going to love them again.
One of the first ideas that Spector and his team came up with was to make the game an immersive sim like the game Spector had previously worked on.
The key to game stories is to recognize the place of story in games. It's not about an author telling a story to a reader. It's not about a director conveying information to a passive audience that just interprets what they're seeing on the screen. It's about providing situations, problems that are personally significant to players that they then get to decide how to interact with. It's about, hey, how do you feel about this? You tell me through the play choices that you make. That's what makes a great game story. It's about this dialogue between, me in this case and the team and every person who plays.
Players would control Mickey Mouse, and the decisions they made would influence what would happen in the game. The other fundamental gameplay concept the team came up with was a magic paintbrush that Mickey could use to draw and erase different aspects of his environment.
He's a cartoon character. That thought started everything. He's made of paint. Someone drew him. And I said, how about if we give Mickey the ability to control the substance of his own being? Give him the power to draw and erase. And at that point, everybody sort of got it.
Epic Mickey was first envisioned as a typical multi-platform release, with planned versions for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. A Nintendo Wii version was also discussed, but Warren Spector did not think this was a good idea. The Wii had limited graphical capabilities and a completely different control scheme compared to the other two platforms, and making a Wii version would essentially be making a completely different game. Spector believed that in order to focus on the quality of the game had to be tailored to the strengths of the platform it was being designed for, as opposed to being a watered-down version that could be ported to any platform. Since more compatible platforms meant more potential buyers, it just made sense to keep it limited to the Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, which had very similar setups, and not focus on platforms like the Wii that were very different. In January of 2008, while these discussions were taking place, Graham Hopper, one of the executives at Disney Interactive, called Spector into his office and asked him what it would take to guarantee a high-quality game that would meet their expectations. Spector answered that what he needed was time, money, and the ability to focus on one platform. Hopper responded by asking, "What do you think about a Wii exclusive?" Spector was initially shocked, but quickly realized what a great idea this was. Not only was the Wii popular among younger and more casual gamers, its specific platform and control scheme was perfectly suited to Epic Mickey. A Wii remote perfectly approximated Mickey's magic brush, and the Wii's motion controls would allow players to physically use the remote the way Mickey would use the brush by pointing it directly at the objects they wanted to draw or erase.
As soon as you start saying, okay, Mickey can draw and erase, can paint and rub things out with paint thinner, everybody I've talked to just starts doing this. I can paint and I can erase. And so, what does this look like? It's a Wii remote. And so it's such a natural step. Everything in this project just sort of fell into place. Cartoon game, Mickey's a cartoon character, control of paint and thinner, drawing and erasing, remote, nunchuck.
Spector told Hopper they thought a Wii exclusive was a great idea, and pitched the concept to the rest of the team, who also loved the idea. It was officially decided. Epic Mickey would be developed as a Wii exclusive game. Later in 2008, the website Gamasutra, now known as Game Developer, released images it claimed were concept art for Epic Mickey. These images were extremely dark and grotesque versions of Disney characters, or original concepts featuring elements from Disney characters, such as this piece of nightmare fuel with multiple heads of different characters. These images were later confirmed to indeed be real, but never intended for the game. As Warren Spector and lead designer Chase Jones would later state, the images were merely an exercise to see just how far Disney would allow them to go with the game's imagery. Other early concepts that may or may not have been officially considered for inclusion in the game include Mickey shooting paint from his hands rather than a brush, and a grotesque version of Mickey with the paint literally melting off his body when the player made enough bad choices. Another early idea was for Oswald the Lucky Rabbit to be the villain of the game, with him possibly taking on a monstrous form at some point. This idea was scrapped after John Lasseter, at the time the chief creative officer at Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios, expressed the opinion that bringing Oswald back to Disney after so many years only to make him a villain was a terrible idea. Oswald was subsequently changed to be a resentful character who is redeemed.
I love Oswald, and I want to make him a hero too. That's, kind of goal 1.5 for this project. Remind people how incredible a character Oswald is and set him up for success as a cartoon star, as a plush toy, you name it. I want Oswald everywhere because he deserves it. Oswald is Mickey Mouse's older brother. And Oswald looks at Mickey's success and just says, I was famous. You stole the life that should have been mine.
One more early concept for Epic Mickey was that the Wasteland, the world in which the story takes place, would be located in a dumpster behind the Walt Disney Studios, where forgotten characters would be discarded. This idea was ultimately deemed too dark, and was changed to the Wasteland being the creation of Yen Sid, the sorcerer from Fantasia. In November of 2009, the world got its first look at Epic Mickey, which graced the cover of Game Informer magazine and was featured in an extended section inside. The main idea the article expresses is how much Epic Mickey was about returning Mickey to his roots and original mischievous personality. Spector is quoted in the article as saying, "At some point, they fractured his personality. They took his mischievousness and his anger and need for revenge and gave it to Donald. They took his naive simplicity and gave it to Goofy. They took his loyalty and infinite affection and gave it to Pluto, of all things. They took his character and just shattered it, and all of a sudden he's kind of a straight man for the gang." Quick side note, no disrespect to Warren Spector, but I don't know what he's talking about with Pluto. Mickey's loyalty and infinite affection were his defining characteristics in the 1940s and 50s, and Pluto is hardly defined by either of those traits, usually being depicted as short-sighted and selfish, but eventually doing the right thing. So the point here is that even a genius like Warren Spector can have a bad take every so often. Anyway, the Game Informer article goes on to describe how Mickey was badly behaved in his early cartoons, and how Epic Mickey was aiming to bring that Mickey back into the public consciousness. Also emphasized is the idea that Disney movies used to be scary, and the desire to incorporate that into Epic Mickey. The article also describes the story and concepts of the game and shows many of its characters and locations. The main concept for Epic Mickey was the magic paintbrush, with which Mickey could use paint to create new objects or thinner to erase them. Similarly, paint could be used to redeem enemies, while thinner would destroy them. In this way, paint and thinner would represent the good and bad sides of Mickey Mouse. Using paint would allow Mickey to be Hero Mickey, while using thinner would turn him into Scrapper Mickey. The player's choices throughout the game would cause Mickey to sink deeper into whichever of these personas lined up with the decisions the player was making. The world the game takes place in was called the Wasteland, and was a dystopian version of Disneyland destroyed by a creature called the Shadow Blot. This character was changed from the original idea of using the Phantom Blot from the Mickey Mouse comics. The Shadow Blot would be a nightmarish creature made from paint and thinner that was unwittingly unleashed on Wasteland by Mickey Mouse, who had wandered into Yen Sid's workshop and accidentally created the blot by playing with Yen Sid's paintbrush, before dumping paint and thinner on the magical model that was a portal to the Wasteland. Also mentioned was Oswald's love interest, Hortensia the cat. While Hortensia dates back to some of the earliest Oswald cartoons, she never had a name, as the cartoons were silent. The Epic Mickey team, therefore, gave her a name that started with the same letter as Oswald, mirroring Mickey's love interest, Minnie Mouse. Mickey and Minnie, Oswald and Hortensia. The Game Informer article, pun intended, painted a fascinating and appealing picture of the upcoming game. However, many of the concepts showcased in the article would not be included in the game, including the concept of Hero and Scrapper Mickey and entire areas and levels shown in the magazine. Warren Spector would later clarify that these were simply where the development of the game was at the time, and were not meant to be representative of the final product. The next release of information about Epic Mickey would be in June of 2010 at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3. This event allowed attendees to play a demo that was very close to the final game.
With the tools of wonder and limitless imagination, I built a world for the forgotten, the unloved. A once joyous land, now ruined by a mischievous mouse. But redemption comes through unparalleled bravery, long-lost friends, and the power of the brush. Only then can a mischievous mouse become an epic hero.
Finally, on November 30th, 2010, Epic Mickey was officially released. A release party was held that same day at the Times Square Disney Store in New York, where Warren Spector and several others were present. Epic Mickey opens with a cutscene narrated by Yen Sid in which Mickey wakes up and travels through a magic mirror into Yen Sid's workshop. Mickey curiously sneaks up to see Yen Sid working on something. That something turns out to be a world for forgotten Disney characters in the form of a Magic Kingdom-style Disney park. Yen Sid uses a magic paintbrush to complete the model, before going to bed for the night. Mickey then creeps in and starts to play with the magic brush, attempting to create a statue of himself in the middle of the model. However, the statue becomes a frightening creature that attacks Mickey, causing him to dump paint and paint thinner all over the model. Yen Sid hears the commotion and comes in to investigate, but Mickey runs off before he is caught. The creature crawls out of the paint jar and into the model, and Yen Sid remarks that his creation has now become a wasteland.
The world I had created was ravaged. A wasteland.
Years go by and Mickey becomes a cartoon star, forgetting about the incident in Yen Sid's workshop. One day, though, he wakes up to see the creature looming over his bed. The creature grabs him and drags him through the magic mirror and into the wasteland, where they crash land into the castle centerpiece, Dark Beauty Castle. The creature flies off and Mickey lies unconscious. When he comes to, Mickey is strapped to a table under a creepy-looking device and sees an evil-looking scientist nearby. Meanwhile, a mysterious cartoon rabbit sneaks in to investigate. The scientist uses the device to try to remove Mickey's heart with a plunger. Mickey breaks free and hurls the plunger at the scientist. The creature then shows up again and Mickey picks up the magic paintbrush to fight it. The scientist flees and Mickey notices the cartoon rabbit, who panics and tries to follow the scientist, but inadvertently reactivates the machine before running off. It's here that the actual gameplay starts and the player can control Mickey Mouse. Mickey meets a gremlin named Gus, who is from a 1943 ruled doll book called The Gremlins that was meant to tie into a Walt Disney animated film that never ended up getting made. Gus becomes Mickey's helper throughout the game and teaches him how to use the spin move to attack and destroy objects. Mickey and Gus leave the area, and Gus tells Mickey that the creature that dragged him into Wasteland is called the Shadow Blot and is made from paint and thinner. He then teaches Mickey how to use the magic paintbrush to control paint and thinner. The paint is used to create objects in predetermined areas, while the thinner is used to erase them. Mickey also notices that paint is dripping off him, and Gus realizes that Mickey absorbs some of the blot. Mickey and Gus run into some blotlings, which are extensions of the blot that form its army. Gus teaches Mickey how to fight them by using thinner to destroy them, or paint to redeem them. Mickey and Gus follow the cartoon rabbit to a projector, which is a portal that allows cartoon characters to travel around the wasteland. Gus tells Mickey that the cartoon rabbit is named Oswald, and that he set up the projectors. They enter the projector. While most of Epic Mickey is a 3D sandbox-style platformer, the projector levels are 2D platforming levels based on different cartoons and animated films. This level is based on the Mickey and the Beanstalk segment of the 1947 film Fun and Fancy Free. Mickey and Gus make their way through some pipes to the Gremlin Village, based on Fantasyland, and see Oswald again. They journey through this area, and Gus teaches Mickey about Guardians. Guardians are spirits that are made of either paint or thinner that Mickey will attract by using either substance. Paint Guardians are called tints, while thinner Guardians are called terps. Guardians can show Mickey where to go or help him fight. They're also one way that Mickey's choices throughout the game will affect what happens. Mickey travels through a version of It's a Small World until he reaches a projector to the world of Gremlins. The projector level is based on Mickey's first cartoon, Steamboat Willie. Mickey and Gus arrive at the world of Gremlins and see that it's been destroyed by the blot. Mickey travels through the village and eventually faces the It's a Small World clock tower and has the choice to either destroy or redeem it. Mickey and Gus then travel to Mean Street, the main hub of Wasteland, which is based on Main Street, USA. Gus explains that many of the characters in Wasteland are forgotten versions of characters, even if those characters are familiar, including multiple versions of Pete. Mickey and Gus arrive at the hub of Mean Street, and Mickey is excited to see a statue of Walt Disney, but is then shocked to see Oswald where Mickey should be. Mickey then travels to Oztown, based on Toontown, and from there to Mickey Junk Mountain, where Oswald lives. Mickey Junk Mountain is made of forgotten Mickey merchandise, and every piece of it you see was a real item from the real world. Mickey arrives at the top of the mountain and has to face 3 challenges to meet Oswald, which are 2D levels based on Oswald cartoons. Mickey finally gets to meet Oswald, who reacts with annoyance to meeting Mickey.
Huh? Yeah.
He reveals that he is jealous of Mickey's success and runs the Wasteland, trying to create a good home for the characters, his sweetheart Hortensia, and their bunny children. But then the Thinner disaster happened, which destroyed what Oswald had built and unleashed the blot. The scientist from before is the Mad Doctor, who joined forces with the blot, and Oswald has been fighting both of them in the blot wars. Also, something has happened to Hortensia, but Oswald won't say what it is. He does tell Mickey, though, that the Mad Doctor wanted Mickey's heart because cartoon characters lose their heart when forgotten, and can't leave the Wasteland without one. Oswald tells Mickey he wants him gone, and to that end will help Mickey leave. He tells Mickey about a Moonliner rocket that can fly him out once he finds several parts for it. The parts are located in 3 areas of Wasteland: Tomorrow City, where the rocket is located based on Tomorrowland, Ventureland, based on Adventureland, and Bog Easy, based on New Orleans Square, a pun on the term Big Easy, which refers to New Orleans. Mickey goes on various adventures and errands in these areas to retrieve the rocket parts. Some notable side quests include Oswald's friends, animatronic versions of Goofy, Daisy, and Donald, whose parts have been scattered around Wasteland. Mickey can retrieve these parts to rebuild these characters. The most important story element from this part of the game is the defeat of the Mad Doctor in Bog Easy and the revelation that the Doctor has turned himself into an animatronic to survive the blot. After defeating him, Mickey finally has all the pieces of the rocket. He meets back with Oswald on Mean Street, who tells him the Blot army is attacking Mickey Junk Mountain, but won't say why, except that they need to be defeated before the rocket can be launched. He also remarks that the price to capture the Blot the last time was terrible. Mickey travels back to Mickey Junk Mountain to fight the Blot, and is able to defeat it either by thinning it or painting and befriending it. After defeating the Blot, Mickey runs to see Oswald desperately holding a cork into a giant glass jug. Mickey and Gus help Oswald push the cork back in, and Oswald explains that the Blot is in the jug, and the Blot Mickey just defeated was just a dripping of the Blot which dripped out of the jug.
Oh. Ah. Huh? What? Oh.
Oswald explains that he and Hortensia defeated the Blot and bottled it up, but he lost Hortensia in the process, and now stays on the mountain to guard the jug and keep the Blot contained. The Blot army was attempting to free the true Blot from the jug. Oswald admits he may have misjudged Mickey, and that Hortensia would want him to be nicer. Oswald offers Mickey a handshake of friendship, but Mickey is unable to take it, admitting to Oswald that he caused the Thinner disaster by messing with Yen Sid's creation.
Huh? Oh.
Mickey expresses his regret over this, but Oswald explodes with anger and jumps up on the cork to fight Mickey. However, he accidentally breaks the cork, unleashing the true form of the Shadow Blot on Wasteland. The Blot grabs Oswald and Gus and demands that in order to save their lives, Mickey must give up his heart to the Blot, which will allow the Blot to leave Wasteland and enter the cartoon world where Mickey is from, and leave Mickey in Wasteland to be forgotten. Mickey gives up his heart and the Blot takes it. The Blot extends tentacles, or bloticles, to absorb all the paint in Wasteland and make itself stronger. Oswald criticizes Mickey for giving up his heart, but admits that he sees why Walt Disney liked him. Oswald wants to give up, not seeing a way to win, but Mickey suggests they use the rocket to reach the Blot after destroying its bloticles. Oswald goes to fix the rocket, while Mickey destroys the bloticles. After doing this, Mickey meets back with Oswald in Tomorrow City. They fly the rocket at the Blot, but crash land in Dark Beauty Castle. Oswald and Mickey travel to the control tower of the castle, where Oswald used to launch fireworks shows. Oswald says they can use the fireworks from 3 towers to attack the Blot. Mickey scales each tower while being attacked by the Blot and sets up the fireworks. Gus starts to fix the batteries to launch the fireworks, and Mickey returns to Oswald and finds him with a statue of Hortensia. Oswald reveals that the statue is Hortensia, rendered inert by the Blot. Mickey apologizes, and Oswald says he knows Mickey didn't mean to cause any harm and that he's caused his own share of messes. After a subtle reference to Runaway Brain, the two reach out for a handshake of forgiveness. Just then, as Gus is finishing fixing the fireworks batteries, the Blot reaches in and grabs Oswald, Gus, and Hortensia. Mickey leaps after them and finds himself inside the Blot. Mickey travels through the blot's innards and frees Gus before destroying the blotticles containing Mickey's heart. The heart is caught by Oswald, who is broken free. Oswald contemplates taking it for himself, but gives it up to Mickey. Mickey's heart is restored, and Oswald launches the fireworks, destroying the blot and sending Mickey back into Yensid's workshop, where Mickey sheepishly gives him back the brush.
The intruder returned to my lab, but not in the way I expected. After retrieving my brush, I peered down into the world I had created and noticed something had changed.
Oswald and Hortensia crash land on Main Street, and as the paint is restored to Wasteland, everything is returned to its original state, including Hortensia.
And of course, the luck of a certain cartoon rabbit.
The two lovers embrace, finally reunited. Yensid sends Mickey back through the mirror, but allows him to see the results of his time in Wasteland and the choices he made throughout his adventure. Oswald and Hortensia run up to the mirror to say goodbye to Mickey, and Oswald and Mickey hold their hands together as brothers as the game ends.
Oswald and Mickey are, in some ways, each a mirror for the other. Brave, resourceful, and good of heart. I hope they become friends, and perhaps more, perhaps even brothers.
After the credits roll, Yensid locks Mickey out of his workshop, and as Mickey sadly turns to go back to his normal life, he realizes that he still contains some of the blot, leaving the door open for future adventures.
To no more mischief in my workshop. Then again, he is Mickey Mouse.
Epic Mickey is my favorite video game of all time. The story of the game is deep and well thought out, and it explores the relationship between Mickey and Oswald in a way that's completely original, imaginative, and heartfelt. Its gameplay is unique and fun, complementing the themes of the story and the platform of the Wii, with the paint and thinner reflecting the choices the player makes between good and evil, as well as the two sides of Mickey, and the Wii Remote perfectly approximating the magic paintbrush. The game has the look and feel of a classic Disney animation. The musical score by James Dooley is beautiful, the Shadow Blot is a horrifying villain reminiscent of classic Disney villains, and the imagery and visuals of the game perfectly capture the scale, drama, whimsy, and majesty of a Disney animated classic. My favorite parts of the game are the Dark Beauty Castle levels toward the end, which remind me of the Night on Bald Mountain sequence from Fantasia, and the fight between Prince Philip and Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, and the final levels where you actually go inside the blot, which is just a brilliantly dark and creative idea. The best thing about Epic Mickey, though, is the story and the relationship between Mickey and Oswald. The conflict between the two characters is an incredibly smart and insightful exploration of Disney's history. Mickey is successfully brought back to his mischievous roots, as his curiosity at the beginning of the game gets him into trouble and causes the disaster that kickstarts the game's plot. However, as the game goes on, Mickey learns to take responsibility and becomes the role model we know him as today, ending the game as a selfless hero. Oswald, for his part, is also a fully fleshed out character. At the beginning of the game, he's cynical and jaded, not through any fault of his own, but because he's lost everything. He lost his fame and standing as Walt Disney's star character to Mickey Mouse. He lost the home and the land he built with his own hands to the Thinner disaster. He lost the love of his life, Hortensia, to the blot, and now he's forced to relive his trauma every day, guarding the jug that holds the blot inside. All of this has made Oswald unable to trust or work with anyone. But as the game goes on, he too grows as a character as he learns his need for a family and that he doesn't need to defend Wasteland alone. It's only by working together that Oswald and Mickey are able to defeat the Blot, save Wasteland, and revive Hortensia, and while Mickey and Oswald started the game as bitter rivals, they end it as friends and brothers. For my money, as a piece of heartfelt visual storytelling and an insightful examination of Disney history, Epic Mickey is a masterpiece. As a video game, though, it isn't perfect, and most of its problems are in the gameplay itself, both mechanically and conceptually. Mechanically, Epic Mickey can be extremely frustrating to play, with the camera being particularly annoying. The camera almost never orients itself correctly, requiring the player to correct it constantly. During normal platforming, this isn't a big issue, but when fighting enemies, it can be downright obnoxious. Even worse is the fact that the camera will sometimes lock in place in the wrong orientation, almost always in a location requiring difficult platforming. For example, if you're on a ledge where you need to jump to another ledge, the camera will rotate in front of you, making it impossible to see where you're jumping, and the game won't let you rotate the camera back. This inevitably leads to multiple unnecessary deaths. The gameplay problems go beyond this though, because the choice and consequence mechanic that form the basis of the game's initial concept is virtually non-existent in the actual game. Levels will give you different choices to deal with obstacles or defeat enemies, but whatever decision you make has little to no impact on the rest of the game. The choices are there, but there's no consequence. One of the most striking examples of this is that when you leave an area and come back, everything you've painted or thinned is reset to the default state, rendering your work functionally meaningless. Now, to be fair, Warren Spector did clarify that this was an intentional choice, meant to introduce the concept of an immersive sim to younger gamers without fully overwhelming them, and that the sequel to Epic Mickey would further flesh this idea out, but more on that later. One more complaint I have about Epic Mickey is the lack of voice acting. I want to actually hear these characters talk, especially considering the weight of some of the drama that unfolds. Epic Mickey is in many ways a phenomenal game, but also in many ways a disappointment. Upon its release, it seemed that what players and critics got out of it depended entirely on their expectations and what they were looking for in this type of game, and as such, the game received fairly mixed reviews. However, it sold out on the first day on the Disney Store website, and sold over 1.3 million copies the first month. Several other pieces of Epic Mickey media were also released alongside the game. These include an app, an Epic Mickey graphic novel, and a digital comic series called Tales of Wasteland. The Epic Mickey app was released for Apple devices and has since been discontinued. I used to have the app back when it launched, but I've switched phones multiple times since then, and so the app is long gone. However, the app has been recreated by fans, and I've left a link to that in the description if you're interested. The app included a map of Wasteland before the Thinner disaster, profiles of the main characters from Epic Mickey, trailers and promo videos for the game, and the Epic Mickey graphic novel and comic series Tales of Wasteland. The graphic novel was meant to have a physical release in the US as well as being featured on the app. This was cancelled. I won't recap the graphic novel as it closely follows the story of the game with only minor differences, but if you're interested in reading it for yourself, you can do so by following the link in the description. The app also included the comics miniseries Tales of Wasteland, which had 6 issues, most of them featuring Oswald, Hortensia, their bunny children, the Mad Doctor, and Oswald's friends animatronic Goofy, Donald, and Daisy. I'm not going to recap these stories either, as they're fairly short and don't really add much to the overall narrative of the game. However, I do think they're worth reading if you're a fan of the game, and so I'll link them in the description as well. Even before Epic Mickey was released, Disney Interactive was exploring ideas for possible sequels and spin-offs. However, after its successful launch, more additions to the franchise became inevitable. One of these ideas was a game starring Donald Duck to be titled Epic Donald. This game would have taken place in the DuckTales universe and featured characters such as Scrooge McDuck, Gyro Gearloose, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie alongside Donald. Concept art reveals that much of the game would focus on various vehicles that Donald would take control of. Warren Spector was apparently so invested in this idea that he wrote a short series of DuckTales comics that were released in 2011. Another proposed idea was a kart racing game similar to Mario Kart, and yet another was an Epic Mickey film adaptation which even had a pitch trailer produced. However, these ideas were not to be, as Disney Interactive was once again restructuring, setting their sights on mobile gaming as their next main focus, which the executives believed was the future of gaming. Some executives even reportedly expressed the belief that console games would soon become a thing of the past. Warren Spector and Junction Point were instructed to simply create a sequel to Epic Mickey. This game will eventually be released as Epic Mickey 2: The Power of Two.
In a once forgotten land, a courageous hero brought hope. But a new threat awaits. And a new ally will join his side. The power of the brush. To the power of 2. Disney Epic Mickey, the power of 2.
According to Spectre, the game had been planned since even before the release of the first Epic Mickey, and was originally to be the second in a 4-part series. Spectre also directly addressed concerns about the camera problems in the first game, stating his intention to fix them in Epic Mickey 2. According to Spectre, our goal is that you will not have to touch the manual camera controls even once to play through the main story path of this game. More on that later. Spectre also stated that this new game would feature voice acting and musical numbers. Most importantly, the game would feature 2-player co-op, allowing players to play as both Mickey and Oswald. Also, unlike the Wii-exclusive first game, Epic Mickey 2 The Power of 2 would be released across multiple platforms including the Wii, Wii U, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, Steam, and a limited PC release. Also, a separate game for the Nintendo 3DS titled Epic Mickey Power of Illusion would be released alongside Epic Mickey 2.
Say the line, Bart!
More on that later. The main console versions of Epic Mickey 2 The Power of 2 were released in North America on November 18, 2012, which was coincidentally Mickey's birthday, with international releases and the Vita, Steam, and PC versions all coming later. Epic Mickey 2 The Power of 2 opens with the end Cid recapping the events of the first game.
With Oswald by his side, good triumphed over evil, and a family was reunited. That was only the beginning. As the Forgotten Toons rebuilt their home, trouble lurked just around the corner.
We then see the citizens of Wasteland working to rebuild when the Mad Doctor shows up and professes his desire to turn over a new leaf and help fight a new threat facing Wasteland, which he does in song.
Friends, I stand before you a changed man. I've seen the error of my ways, and now I've got a plan. Help me, help you. What better time to start? Help me, help you. Find a hero with a heart.
Oswald at first doesn't want to trust the Mad Doctor, but when he says everyone deserves a second chance, Oswald decides to believe the best, and boards the Doctor's flying vehicle, on which they fly off.
A second chance is what we all deserve.
Hortensia and Gus are suspicious, though, and go to Dark Beauty Castle to try to contact the only one who can help, Mickey Mouse. They built a TV that can contact the cartoon world and contact Mickey Mouse. This is where the gameplay starts. Mickey walks over to his TV, where he sees Gus calling for help.
Mickey, you need to help us. Sending you to a place. Get the brush.
Mickey ventures from his house into Yensid's workshop and retrieves the magic paintbrush.
With the brush in hand, Mickey saw that the very stars were waiting to come alive. They needed only paint to dance once more.
He then finds himself back in his house and must re-enter the workshop and find the portal to Wasteland.
Finding himself at home, Mickey should have felt safe. Looking at the brush, he wondered if Thinner could help him find the truth behind his unease.
He explores the workshop and eventually enters the portal, traveling to Wasteland. After Mickey arrives, Gus and Hortensia fill him in on what's going on, and Oswald shows up shortly after. Oswald explains that according to the Mad Doctor, Wasteland is being attacked by creatures that are part blot and part animatronic. Hortensia refuses to believe that the Mad Doctor can be trusted, despite Oswald's optimism. Mickey suggests they investigate what's going on for themselves and try to find the Mad Doctor. An earthquake strikes the castle though, and the group is forced to escape. This is where the gameplay properly starts, with the first player controlling Mickey and a second player having the option to control Oswald. The team escape the castle and board a train that looks like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad headed for Mean Street. They arrive and confront the Mad Doctor, who at first acts suspicious, but then reiterates his supposed desire to be good in another song, before flying off saying he's going to help another part of Wasteland. Hortensia states that she still doesn't trust the Doctor, and Gus says they should fix the broken projectors that were damaged by the earthquake and force them to take the train in the first place. With the help of a gremlin named Jamface, the group travels from the earthquake-damaged Mean Street through a system of tunnels called the Underground to Oztown and several other locations, before getting a mysterious call from the Mad Doctor asking for them to come to his lab in Disney Gulch, based on Frontierland and partially borrowing its name from Hong Kong Disneyland's Frontierland equivalent, Grizzly Gulch. Mickey and Oswald eventually arrive at the Mad Doctor's lab, where they are attacked by a giant Blotworks dragon. After they defeat it, they see the Mad Doctor fall from a window in front of them, and the Doctor reveals that his animatronic parts are breaking down, which he does in song.
I'm falling apart.
He then sings another song about wanting to be good and to be a cartoon again. Mickey, Oswald, and the Mad Doctor take the fixed projector back to Mean Street, where the Doctor announces that he can stop the earthquakes, and also reiterates his desire to be a toon, which he does in song. Just then, Small Pete, a version of Pete associated with It's a Small World, shows up and reveals that the projectors were not damaged by the earthquake, but were in fact sabotaged using fake teeth from Oztown's gag factory. Oswald tries to figure out who could have done this, but is somehow unable to. The group decide to talk to Gremlin Prescott, who is in charge of the gag factory. He was last seen in Blot Alley, an area of Bloggeezy, so the group heads that way. After several adventures, they finally find Prescott, who reveals that he sabotaged the projectors as part of a plan to acquire Mickey's magic brush after feeling underappreciated for his talents. He unveils a giant robotic Prescott, which Mickey and Oswald defeat. Gus tries to reconcile with Prescott, who reveals that he was working for someone. Before he can say who, though, animatronic Daisy, Big Bad Pete, and the Mad Doctor arrive from the nearby projector. Daisy talks to a news camera about what's happening, and a device hypnotizes Prescott before the Mad Doctor sings a song to him about how he forgives him for being evil. Hypnotized Prescott then sings a song about how everything was his fault. Pete then picks up Prescott and carries him away as the Mad Doctor announces that all the problems are gone now and he plans to build a new attraction.
Say the line, Bart!
Which he does in song.
Yeah!
Oswald somehow falls for this, and Mickey expresses his suspicions over the whole thing. After they check on Prescott, who is still hypnotized, Gus reveals that he recently discovered a secret project Prescott was working on in Ventureland, and the group goes to investigate. They arrive in Ventureland and run into Daisy, who says the Mad Doctor closed the area down, which Oswald says he had no right to do. Daisy responds by saying that Oswald has been gone recently, whereas the Doctor has been helping rebuild Wasteland. Oswald storms off, and Gus says he's feeling forgotten again. The group sneaks into Ventureland and finds a ride called Autotopia, based on Disneyland's Autopia, which has been rigged as a machine to capture Guardians. They destroy the machines and free the Guardians before finding a projector screen leading to the Mad Doctor's old attic. They travel through it and find themselves in the Mad Doctor's Blotworks factory, where they hear a song recording of the Mad Doctor admitting that he created the Blotworks. They come out the other side of the projector and find themselves in the Doctor's attic, where they find another projector screen and a convenient diary in which the Mad Doctor has outlined his entire evil plan to frame Prescott, broadcast a TV show to the cartoon world so he'll be remembered, use the Guardians to make himself a toon again, and destroy Wasteland.
Say the line, Bart!
Which he does in song.
Yeah!
Oswald expresses shock at this revelation, somehow, and they realize the projector screen leads to the Doctor's new attraction. They travel through it to find the Mad Doctor with a giant robotic arm holding everyone captive and threatening to kill all of them and destroy Wasteland if Mickey doesn't give him the brush, which will allow the Mad Doctor to take over the cartoon world.
Say the line, Bart!
He doesn't sing this time. Mickey starts to hand over the brush, but Oswald stops him and the two brace for a fight.
No, Mickey! The brush would make him unstoppable!
Well, then let's stop him!
They defeat the robotic arm, but it knocks him deeper into the Mad Doctor's lair, where he attacks him with a giant robotic mech suit. Depending on how the player chooses to defeat him, he is either destroyed or redeemed. Either way, Oswald and Mickey free the Guardians and the other characters and share a handshake of victory. Just as in the first game, the player then gets to see the outcomes of the choices they made throughout the game. Yen Sid once again narrates and reaffirms the bond between Mickey and Oswald as the game ends.
Mickey and Oswald did not know what challenges may lay ahead, but they were comforted by the knowledge that together they could conquer anything.
After the credits roll, we see that the Peets have captured Prescott and are planning something evil, hinting at a third main game in the series. Epic Mickey 2: The Power of Two improves on the first game in at least a few ways. It features voice acting, the graphics are updated, and the ability for a second player to control Oswald is a welcome addition. That's pretty much where the positives end, though. Overall, and I say this with love as a fan of the franchise and even an enjoyer of this game, Epic Mickey 2: The Power of Two is largely a disappointing and lackluster experience. Let's start with the camera, the problem that Warren Spector says his team set out to fix. I'm sorry, but they didn't. The camera in this game is just as bad as it is in the first game. So is every aspect of the gameplay. During promotion of Epic Mickey 2, Warren Spector stated that choice and consequence were intentionally limited in the first game to introduce younger players to the concept, but in Epic Mickey 2, they would be fully included, since players would now understand them.
Any game that claims to be about choice and consequence, where your playstyle matters, has to have persistence. If your choices really don't make a difference, if they undo themselves when you leave a map or leave a scene, and it just doesn't make any sense. But we had to do that in the first game. We had to undo your changes when you left, not for any technical reason. There was no. It was a design decision. We were introducing kids and adult non-gamers, Mickey Mouse, Disney fans, to the idea that games aren't just about solving puzzles, that what they do actually matters. And so we wanted to give them what I called even then choice and consequence light. But now that we've introduced them to that, and they get it, we can actually make those choices matter. So in Disney Epic Mickey 2, all the Deus Ex fans and the people who've come to appreciate that in some of my work and other people's work, they're going to experience their playstyle really mattering. If you make a choice in this game, it's going to stay forever until you return and undo it. So be careful.
This does not appear to me to be the case. The choice and consequence in the gameplay feels just as meaningless as it does in the first game. The gameplay is also frustrating in ways the first game wasn't. I found myself getting stuck in areas constantly, not because the challenges were too hard, but because it just wasn't obvious what I was supposed to do. Additionally, certain enemies, like these car robots, are almost impossible to defeat and immediately respawn when you do defeat them, completely wasting your time. Oswald is also annoying as he gets in your way constantly. To make matters worse, in the departments where the first Epic Mickey really shone, the visual design and the story, Epic Mickey 2 is once again a disappointment. The only level or area I personally think is visually great is the very first level in Mickey's house in Yen Sid's workshop, which I genuinely love. It has this very magical feel to it with this flying machine and these floating rocks with the stars in the background, and it's all extremely cool. I also love this wall in Mickey's house that you can thin that reveals the workshop behind it. But once you enter Wasteland though, the game becomes visually bland and boring with the exception of only a few areas like Rainbow Caverns, which do look decent. But for the most part, despite being more polished and featuring better graphics, the visuals have all the sinister edge and whimsical charm of the first game sucked out of them. And the beautiful side-scrolling levels based on classic Mickey and Oswald cartoons have been almost entirely replaced by whatever this is. The story is also a big letdown. Where the first game focused on Oswald's feelings of resentment towards Mickey and Mickey's desire to reconcile with Oswald, here they get no character development whatsoever, unless you count Oswald being the most gullible character of all time development.
He told me no one could defeat me.
He told you? Who are you talking about?
All the things that went so wrong, it was I who planned it.
What will you do now?
I guess Prescott was working alone.
Are you sure about that?
Now, I know that the intention here was to impress that Oswald is trying to give everyone a second chance because he needs one himself, but the way it's executed just does not feel believable or sincere at all.
The first game was about the importance of family and deciding how important that was to you. Disney Epic Mickey 2: The Power of Two continues that theme, but now that Oswald and Mickey know they're a family. And this one is much more about the possibility of redemption. I mean, you try not to talk about the themes too much, because you want players to sort of discover them for themselves. But I think this is about, is everybody redeemable or not?
The game wants to explore the question of whether or not the Mad Doctor can be redeemed, but it's very obvious from the beginning that the answer will be no. The game isn't even subtle about this, with obvious hints dropped constantly that he's been evil the whole time. And since the game is just following the characters trying to figure out what the player already knows, the story ends up feeling like a series of pointless tasks you have to complete while waiting for the inevitable revelation of the Mad Doctor's villainy. Nothing feels properly motivated. Additionally, the inclusion of songs feels completely out of place, mostly because pretty much the only character who sings is the Mad Doctor, and he pretty much only sings, with only a few words of spoken dialogue, and only a few lines of his songs given to other characters. So the story almost entirely consists of characters who almost entirely only talk, and one character who almost entirely only sings. If the game had committed to being a musical with every character singing, then I could have gotten behind this choice, especially since I'm an enormous fan of musicals. But the way it's done here simply doesn't work. It also doesn't help that the songs here are pretty mediocre. The only one I kind of like is the first song, which is apparently just called Opening. I like the repeated line, "Help me, help you."
Help me, help you. What better time to start? Help me, help you. Find a hero with a heart.
And the last line about everyone deserving a second chance is the only time in the game this concept feels sincere.
A second chance is what we all deserve.
But none of the other songs stood out to me at all. Also, this is more of a nitpick, but something that really bothered me in Epic Mickey 2 was the names of random characters. While every character in the first Epic Mickey is afforded the dignity of an individual name, in Epic Mickey 2 you'll meet multiple characters who are just called male goat or female cow. It just comes across as lazy and makes the world feel that much less lived in. Apparently, the story wasn't always meant to be like this. In fact, it was originally very different. In the original concept, Pete was going to be a henchman of the Mad Doctor, but then betray him after his friend Gremlin Prescott is killed by the Mad Doctor's blot works. Additionally, the game would have featured the Mad Doctor attempting to bring back the blot by using Mickey's heart. This plotline was reportedly changed for two reasons. First, to leave room for the Petes to be the antagonists of a potential Epic Mickey 3, which was teased in the end credit scene of Epic Mickey 2, and secondly, because the production of Epic Mickey 2 was reportedly rushed and they needed to simplify the story to finish it on time. There were also many more levels planned that were ultimately cut, including levels based on Disney's Robin Hood, The Jungle Book, and Dumbo. Now, despite all these criticisms, I truly don't hate this game. For me, the appeal of a simple adventure starring Mickey and Oswald is enough for me to find enjoyment, and I know I'll be returning to this game to play through it again. And I definitely think that everyone who worked on it is extremely talented, and one game that didn't meet expectations doesn't prove otherwise. But especially compared to the first game, Epic Mickey 2 The Power of Two can't help but feel to me like wasted potential. A much better game in my opinion was the Nintendo 3DS game released alongside it, Epic Mickey Power of Illusion. This game is set after the events of Epic Mickey 2 and takes heavy inspiration from Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, that one game I mentioned all the way back at the beginning of this video. This game is a 2D platformer unlike the two main games and was developed by Dream Rift and not Junction Point. This game features Mickey traveling to the Wasteland to investigate the appearance of the Castle of Illusion, inhabited by the witch Miserabelle, who is holding multiple Disney characters hostage, including Minnie Mouse. However, after Mickey leaves, it's revealed that Minnie is in fact safe. Mickey and Oswald become trapped in the castle and learn that Miserabelle is attempting to drain the paint from the characters and use their hearts to escape Wasteland. Mickey saves the characters and eventually faces Miserabelle, who has taken the form of Maleficent as a dragon. Mickey defeats her and returns home, only to find Minnie. Mickey starts to tell her about his adventure, but she reveals that she saw the whole thing in a dream, suggesting that maybe she was there after all. As the credits roll, the Disney characters all thank Mickey for saving them and say their goodbyes. Epic Mickey Power of Illusion is a pretty solid 3DS game. While it doesn't stand up to the best 2D platformers like anything in the Super Mario Bros. Series, or the best 3DS games like Super Mario 3D Land or The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, it is a fun little game that in my opinion succeeds at what it sets out to do. I think my favorite aspect of it is just all the different Disney characters interacting, and especially Oswald getting to meet his extended Disney family and really feel included with them, which I think is very nice. As mentioned before, a third main game in the series had been planned, with the Pete's planned to be the main villains, and the story planned to span both Wasteland and the cartoon world. However, this was not to be. Both Epic Mickey Power of Illusion and Epic Mickey 2 The Power of Two would receive mixed reviews from critics and fail to meet their sales goals, with Epic Mickey 2 The Power of Two selling less than a quarter of what the first Epic Mickey sold. That, combined with the new direction Disney Interactive was taking, spelled the end of Epic Mickey, and the series was cancelled and Junction Point was shut down several months later on January 29, 2013. Disney Interactive in general had been heavily struggling for years, and lost over $200 million a year since 2008. Disney Interactive itself would shut down only 3 years later in 2016. Warren Spector described his reaction to Junction Point closing as heartbroken, even to the point of turning down an opportunity to join Disney's exclusive Club 33, a decision he later regretted. In a Facebook post, Spector said, "Never have I been part of a game, of anything really, that touched people at as deep or personal a level as the Epic Mickey games. That's priceless. I said to myself as Junction Point embarked on the Epic Mickey journey that, worst case, we'd be a footnote in Disney history. Looking back on it, I think we did far better than that. With Mickey Mouse as our hero, we introduced a mainstream audience to some cool core game concepts, and most especially, we restored Oswald the Lucky Rabbit to a place of prominence. We did that. Junction Point." When we talk about the history of Disney, something that's often overlooked is that the story of Disney is the story of failure. What many creatives and even those at Disney seem to often forget is that failure is a natural and even necessary part of the creative process. I can't tell you how many videos I've spent weeks and even months working on that never became successful, and I don't know how well this video will do. But taking risks and risking failure is necessary to create something of value.
It felt like as a gamer that the Wii had kind of started to tail off a little bit, and so when you think of Epic Mickey now in hindsight, what do you think about?
I am so proud of that game. Deus Ex and Epic Mickey are without question the high points of my career. The opportunity to bring Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Walt Disney's first star, back to the world. The fact that that happened in a game. I mean, think about what that says about Disney.
He's every day in California Adventure now.
And we did that. I got more fan mail about Epic Mickey than any game I've ever worked on. It was more heartfelt fan mail than any game I've ever worked on. We touched people in a way that games just never touch people. I got email from people and letters, hard copy letters from people saying that Epic Mickey helped them get through chemotherapy. There was one kid, we were showing the game at New York Comic Con, and a kid in a wheelchair was rolled up by his dad. And he had cerebral palsy, and he was about to go in for surgery, and he asked his dad, he played the game, he had enough dexterity to play the game, and he asked his dad, "Can I use this as part of my physical therapy after my surgery?" And a little while later, I got a letter from the dad saying his doctor said it would be great physical therapy, and it had really helped his son out. But here's the one, I'm gonna start crying right now actually, but here's the one that kills me. I got an envelope in the mail, and I opened it up, and out came a drawing, a colored pencil drawing of Oswald and Mickey. Oswald with his arm around Mickey, Mickey with his arm around Oswald, legs dangling off a cliff, looking up at a starry sky. And it looked like it was, an 8 or 9 year old, kid had drawn it.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills thinking about this. And then I pulled out the letter inside, and the letter was from a father who said, "My 16-year-old autistic daughter doesn't interact with the world, but she played your game and drew this and insisted that I send it to you. She engaged with the world because of your game." Screw Metacritic, screw the gamers who didn't like our camera, screw everybody. I am really proud of that game, and I am really proud of the team that made it, and nothing is going to ever sway me from feeling like that was one of the high points of my career.
Hello, I'm AtlasGeneticist, musician, artist, and video editor, and I'm here to talk about my experience with Epic Mickey. A major inspiration as to why I love animation history, animation in general, and a big reason for me becoming an artist or a creative was my love for this game. The moment I had first learned about Epic Mickey, I had just woken up. I must have been around 9 or 10, turning on my TV in the middle of the night, and on the TV was a trailer for the then up-and-coming Epic Mickey. After seeing the trailer, I had become entirely obsessed with the premise of the game. Lost forgotten films, scrapped projects, and lost characters, who they were and where they came from. I think that's a big proponent as to why lost media has just blown up in popularity as of late. A lot of those kids grew up thinking about these scrapped ideas and projects. Studios have just little to no documentation, at least publicly. I'd always wanted to learn more about cartoons and where they came from. And after playing this game, my interest just grew more. I have, over the years, found creators who have made a vast variety of fan content and have made friends over a shared interest in Epic Mickey. The Epic Mickey Files by Animat. I was a big fan of Lenny and Shinko. There's Jake Neutron, who's really well known for his Oswald-related projects. A lot of his Friday Night Funkin' stuff is really popular.
Epic Mickey touched the lives of countless people, including my own. And no matter how many units it sold or what kinds of reviews it got, even the ones I've offered in this video, that is not a failure. That is a success.
I don't suppose you have any influence to maybe try and get that game put back out on Switch or bring that game forward so that it can sort of try to live on more than being tied to the Wii.
Unfortunately, Disney decided they wanted to get out of the game business, and Junction Point was kind of the leading edge of a bunch of layoffs, and they're a licensing organization now, and I have no say. They own it. I have no say in anything that happens at Disney. I'd go back in a heartbeat, actually, if they asked me, but no, there's nothing I can do about it.
But of course, this isn't the end of the story. In February of this year, 2024, it was announced that a remake of Epic Mickey, titled Epic Mickey Rebrushed, would be released across multiple gaming platforms.
There was this overall hope in the Epic Mickey community that someday this game would come to modern consoles. And on February 21st, on the latest Nintendo Direct, on my birthday no less, it happens. Finally happened. It was a very big cathartic moment for me and countless of other fans waiting for the day this game would come back. So here's to Epic Mickey coming back to the public consciousness with the new Epic Mickey remaster coming to almost everything.
As of the recording of this video, this game has yet to be released, so who knows how well it will do. But it illustrates something important about the story of Disney. It's not just the story of failure, it's the story of returns. Epic Mickey featured the return of Oswald Lucky Rabbit and the return of Mickey Mouse to his original personality. Both characters were lost in a way, but through finding each other, they also found themselves. This relationship between Mickey and Oswald mirrors that of their real-life creators, Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks. Mickey would be nothing without Oswald, who provided the foundation for Mickey's success, and Oswald would be nothing without Mickey, whose success provided the foundation for Oswald's return. Ub Iwerks would have been nothing without Walt Disney and his creative ideas, and Walt Disney would have been nothing without Ub Iwerks to bring those ideas to life through his animation. Although Ub Iwerks left Disney in 1930, he would return a decade later in 1940 to work for Walt Disney once again. There's even a story that Ub contributed a single frame of animation to Mickey Mouse in Fantasia, meaning that for Mickey's first reinvention and most iconic role, his original co-creator and animator was there. But did Walt and Ub reconcile like Mickey and Oswald? Did they rekindle their friendship? No one really knows. I personally like to believe that they did, not because of any particular evidence, but because what Disney has taught me is that life is better when we believe the good can win and will win in the end. And as Saving Mr. Banks taught me,
maybe not in life, but in imagination, because that's what we storytellers do. We restore order with imagination.
Walt and Ub's friendship, Mickey Mouse, Oswald Lucky Rabbit, and Epic Mickey itself were all given a second chance, a chance to return. And I think there's something deeply poetic and beautiful about that. The story of Epic Mickey is the story of Disney. It's a story of creativity, of creator and creation. It's a story of forgotten things remembered, of redemption and second chances. It's a story of friendship and the importance of the choices we make. It's a story of how good can always win in the end if we do what's right and work together. It's a story of failure, and it's a story of return. In other words, the story of Epic Mickey is a story that's truly epic. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much to AtlasGeneticist for participating. I appreciate it so much. Go check out his channel, it's linked in the description. If you'd like to support this channel as well as get exclusive early access and other perks, you can do so by joining my Patreon, which is linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching everyone, and remember that you're extraordinary. I love all of you so much, and I'll see you all again real soon. Bye.